Hey guys, welcome back to day 2 of our new devotional series called The Essentials as we walk through some of the classic stories that the Bible has to offer. Yesterday we looked at the story of Joshua and Jericho and we saw kind of an unorthodox method that God had given to Joshua and the Israelites to overcome their enemy, the Jerichites. Today we're going back even further in history to the story of a man named Noah. Now you may have heard this story involves a great flood, a giant boat, a bunch of animals, but we're going to jump right into Genesis chapter 6. So this is at the very beginning of the story, okay? We're only 6 chapters into this, 6 chapters from the moment of creation. And so what happens is time has gone on for a period of years now, and what happens in verse 5, Moses writes this: "When the Lord saw that human wickedness was widespread on the earth, and that every inclination of the human mind was nothing but evil all the time, the Lord regretted that he had made man on the earth, and he was deeply grieved. And then the Lord said, I will wipe mankind whom I created off the face of the earth, together with the animals, creatures that crawl, and birds of the sky, for I regret that I made them. Noah, however, found favor with the Lord." And so what we see is this, and if you read through the past 5 chapters, it's pretty evident that as time has gone on from the fall, when Adam and Eve were exiled from the garden, humankind has kind of just gone downhill. They keep choosing to do the things that they desire to do, whether they're good or not. It's whatever makes them happy, whatever pleases them in that moment. We see a lot of characters, they murder, they steal, they commit all these atrocities. Every once in a while there is an individual who Scripture remarks, honored God or sought God, Seth, Enoch, but for the most part, these individuals were seeking their own desires, and God looks down and he sees mankind and is so upset because almost all of mankind is evil. And so God's to the point that he's like, I wish I hadn't even made mankind now. Like, this is what they're going to do. So, you know what? I'm going to wipe them out. I'm going to erase all this because everyone's evil. But Noah found favor in God's eyes, and God, being a good and just God, looks at Noah and says, tell you what, I'm gonna wipe out everything else, but Noah, I'm gonna save you and your family because you found favor with me, you've sought me. And so we continue on in the story. In verse 11, and this kind of restates what God had just said. Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight, and the earth was filled with wickedness. And God saw how corrupt the earth was, for every creature had corrupted its way on the earth. Then God said to Noah, I've decided to put an end to every creature, for the earth is filled with wickedness because of them. Therefore, I'm going to destroy them along with the earth. And so God comes to Noah, and this is not the last time that we'll see God confide his plans to a human being. As we start looking at Abraham later, we'll see that God actually comes to Abraham at one point and tells Abraham, this is what I'm going to do to Sodom and Gomorrah. And Abraham actually engages with God and asks God to be gracious to Sodom and Gomorrah. And so here we see God is meeting with Noah. Noah, this is what I'm going to do. And he's telling Noah, I'm going to destroy the earth, but because you found favor with me, because there's righteousness in you, you've sought me, I'm going to spare you and your family. And he tells him, he goes, go build this boat. And he gives him the dimensions for this boat. And this boat is absolutely massive. Now, what's interesting to note this time, boats were probably not a very big thing back then. As far as we know, it doesn't look like it's rained yet. There's other passages of Scripture that talks about this, and even scientifically, there is the possibility that there was what's called a sphere of water or like dew that surrounded the Earth because of the atmosphere and the way that it was kind of made up at that time. The Earth's atmosphere could have been held a lot of moisture in it, and so we don't really see that there was a whole lot of rain going on because it wasn't necessary. This ball of dew basically would have protected the earth from UV radiation. It would have provided moisture for the atmosphere. It would have been very humid. And so God comes and says, no, I want you to build this massive boat. This is something that is not normal. And so Noah goes and he listens to God, and we have to understand Noah is not a young man. He's not like in his 40s and 50s doing this. Verse 6 says this: Noah was 600 years old when the flood came and water covered the earth. Noah is old as dirt. Now back then, as we follow through these chapters, we see that a lot of these individuals lived a lot longer. And if you want to get into the science behind it, we won't dive too far into that, but there is the possibility that because of that water sphere that covered the earth, that dew in the atmosphere blocked so much of the radiation, and there wasn't a lot of pollutants in the atmosphere, that actually it allowed people to live longer. The earth was significantly healthier. That's a possibility. Scripture doesn't give us that as a direct example, but we see that at this point in time, people were living a lot longer. So Noah's 600 years old. He builds the ark. Him and his family get on it. The animals, 2 by 2, they come, 7 of each of the clean animals. And then this is what it says in verse 11. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, on the 17th day of the month. And what's interesting is Moses is very specific about recording this. This isn't just some kind of fable like, yeah, the flood came. No, Moses has an exact day. On the 17th day of the month, 17th day of the 2nd month, in the 600th year of Noah's life, on that day, all the sources of the vast watery depths burst open. So we're seeing something like massive geysers erupting from the earth, spewing water trapped within the crust. And the floodgates of the sky were opened, and so it's starting to torrential downpour. If we have this water sphere around the earth, it's starting to just, all the dew is falling to the earth. And the rain fell on the earth for 40 days and for 40 nights. And what's interesting is when we read this story, if you've heard it like in Sunday school or something, we always hear the 40 days and 40 nights. The flood was 40 days long, 40 nights long. That's not actually what Scripture's telling us right here. Scripture says the rain fell for 40 days and 40 nights. The flood goes on for a lot longer than 40 days and 40 nights. That's just when the rain is actively falling. And we'll see in just a minute exactly how long it lasts. Chapter 8, it opens like this. God remembered Noah, as well as the wildlife and all the livestock that were with him in the ark. And God caused a wind to pass over the earth, and the water began to subside. What's interesting about this is it says God remembered Noah. So you have to think that Noah and his family in the midst of this, okay? So this flood goes on for a very long time. And in the midst of that, surely you're going to start doubting, was this right? Has God forgotten us now? Has God abandoned us? Is this our own judgment? We're just floating forever on this watery abyss? But we see here that God didn't forget Noah. God remembered Noah in the midst of all this. And God begins moving the water back and allowing it to subside. In verse 13, we see this in the 601st year, in the 1st month, on the 1st day of the month, the water had covered the earth, was dried up. Then Noah removed the ark's cover and saw that the surface of the ground was dry. And by the 27th day of the 2nd month, the earth was dry. So here's how long this flood lasted, okay? Moses wrote that on the 17th day of the 2nd month, in the 600th year of Noah's life, the rain started. 2nd month, 17th day. A whole year later, on the 27th day of the 2nd month, the earth was finally dry. Noah and his family are actually in that ark for an entire year. So you want to find somebody in the Bible that can relate to what we're going through right now with quarantine? They were stuck in a boat for a year with a bunch of animals. That's not exactly the most ideal situation to be in. But God brings the ark to rest. He brings it on the mountains of Ararat, which is actually a mountain range in Turkey right now. And so the ark rests on this mountain, the water continues to recede, and Noah and his family come out with the animals, and Noah offers a sacrifice to God, honoring and acknowledging God as a way of showing honor back then. In verse 21, this is how we see this conclude. When the Lord smelled the pleasing aroma, he said to himself, I will never again curse the ground because of human beings, even though the inclination of the human heart is evil from youth onward. And I will never again strike down every living thing as I have done. As long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, and day and night will not cease. And there's two very beautiful things in this section right here as we look at this. So we've come to the end of the flood, and God is looking out, and we see God's grace profoundly displayed right here. Because God's not saying, all right, it's good now, we're restarting. No, he says, even though the inclination of the human heart is evil from youth onwards, every human being is evil, is what he's saying, okay? They desire evil things. Even though that's the case, I will never again curse the ground. I will never flood the earth. I will never destroy the earth like this because of the evil of their hearts. God is saying, I'm going to withhold my judgment on this. And then he goes on and says, as long as the earth endures, he lists out all these things. What's important for us to know this, because a lot of times we look at society and we look at things that happen and you hear all these doomsday reports. I remember being at Chick-fil-A in 2012 when they had that whole, the world's going to end, the Mayan calendar ended. I remember getting up, going to work, and everyone was talking about it. And guess what? We woke up the next day. The earth didn't end. And God is saying right here, as long as the earth endures, all this stuff will continue. Not that there won't be hardships, but God is going to be the one who ends the earth. We see this in Revelation. Not some random war, not some random chance of fate, not some asteroid passing by the earth. But God, in his grace, has decided to allow the earth to continue. And we see the grace he showed Noah here. Noah would come on to rebuild the human race. But in spite of all the evil that God knew was going to come, with all of Noah's descendants, God said, I will never again destroy the earth with this flood. And that's the kind of God we serve, a God of grace, a God of love. Yes, a God who is just and a God who does have judgment at some points, but a God who is very gracious. Guys, I love you. I'm excited to meet with you all this week. I hope these passages are exciting for you as you get to kind of relive some of these classic stories. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to message us on this video and tell us what you think about these passages, or comment on our Instagram page and just tell us how life is going. Until next time, I'll talk to you guys later.